Good evening, friends, and welcome to Mirror Valley. Strange sounds in the middle of the night. We've all heard them from time to time. Most of us dismiss them away. Perhaps the house is settling, or maybe it's just the wind. Tonight, we find out what happens when a mysterious sound reveals itself to be something else. Something entirely unexpected. The time is at hand once more. Turn off the lights, lock your doors, and join me as we take a look at another twisted reflection.
The Midnight Sound. It was late December, the night when it all began. My job was working me harder than usual, and I'd come home in the evenings with barely enough energy to down dinner and a couple of drinks before collapsing in bed. This night was no different. Running on autopilot, I brushed my teeth, set my alarm clock, and was out like a light by the time my head touched the pillow. I slept soundly, a death-like, dreamless sleep until, little by little, something began to intrude from the outside world. Something formless at first, little more than an echo of a sensation, coalescing as my consciousness returned until finally it became clear. It was a sound. Quiet, but audible enough to wake me. By the time it pulled me from my sleep, it was gone, and I was left lying in the dark, eyes closed, not knowing what had pulled me from my slumber. Then it happened again. The sound was quiet, but unmistakable. The faintest noise, repeating several times in quick succession before coming to an abrupt stop. This time I took notice, and I opened my eyes, unable to see anything at all in the pitch black of the room. It sounded like footsteps, coming from the far end of the house. Not human footsteps, much too quick and quiet for that, but like the pitter-patter of tiny little feet running across the floor. My sleep-weary brain instantly shot to an image from my childhood, a little gnome from a terrifying movie I'd seen as a child, its tiny little feet skittering across the floor, its minuscule arm outstretched in front of it, as its small but deadly sharp knife gleamed in the moonlight. I lay in bed, motionless, holding my breath, listening for the sound once again. Had I imagined it? Perhaps something carried out of the confusion of a dream? I'd been sleeping so deeply lately that it didn't seem at all unlikely that sleep had a particularly strong hold on my mind. I lay there with eyes open, breath held, listening intently for the sound to return, but I couldn't hear a thing. After a few moments, I slowly let go of the air in my lungs and allowed my eyes to close once more, telling myself I was imagining things. But even as the powerful pull of sleep once again dragged me under, I couldn't shake the unmistakable feeling that it was not just my imagination. The dreamless void once again overtook me, and more of my mind resigned itself to the void of sleep. As I drifted off, a tiny sliver of my remaining consciousness tried to rouse itself to attention. Was I hearing the sound again? Before I could be sure, I fell back to sleep. Sometime later, I don't know how long, I awoke, the sound forgotten. It was still dark outside. I dragged myself out from under the covers and, lights still off and eyes barely open, I shuffled into the bathroom. As soon as I stepped through the bathroom door, I felt something brush across my leg. Instantly, I leapt back, letting out a small yelp. The sound! There it was, this time retreating down the hallway. The sound of something, the something that had just touched my leg, running down the hall. This was the sound I had heard earlier, the sound of tiny little footsteps racing around on my floor. I became alert in an instant, reflexively reaching out and snapping on the bathroom light. Nothing. Slowly, carefully, I peered out of the doorway and down the hall toward the living room. Everything was dark. Only the faintest hint of moonlight illuminated the room. A suspicious shadow seemed to sit on the floor at the end of the hall. Was something there, watching? Or was it just a shadow playing tricks on me? "Hello?" I called out. No reply. I took one cautious step into the hallway, and the shadow raced out of sight, once again accompanied by the pitter-patter of tiny feet. Was it some sort of animal? Slowly, carefully, one step at a time, I approached the dark living room, listening intently for any sound that might alert me to the mysterious intruder's location. Closer, step by step. My heart was racing, mind swimming. What the hell was in my house? I made my way down to the end of the hallway, eyes searching frantically for any sign of movement. I carefully leaned in and felt around on the wall for the light switch. Then, just as my fingers found the switch and flicked it on, the creature reappeared, racing right toward me. I leapt back, letting out a scream so loud it reverberated throughout the neighborhood as the creature stopped right next to my feet. It was a furry black cat, standing at my feet, purring and watching my panicked reaction with a quizzical stare. I didn't have a cat. My guard dropped and I laughed out loud as I realized this cute little thing had been the source of the tiny footsteps I'd heard. I didn't have any pets myself, but had always been comfortable around them. I bent down, holding out my hand, and surprisingly, the cat came right up to me and began rubbing up against me. How did it get into my house? My doors and windows were all closed. It must have slipped in when I came in the door after work, though I could scarcely believe I wouldn't have noticed. I figured it must belong to one of my neighbors. It was much too friendly to be a stray, and it was also wearing a collar that appeared to have an ID tag. I looked at the tag, angling it until I could read the tiny letters etched in the small brass disc. It read, "If found, please call," and then a phone number. I let go of the tag, stood up, backing away from the cat. The phone number was mine.
We will return to our story in just a moment. But first...
Enjoying the show? Please help us out and like this video, and subscribe to the Mirror Valley YouTube channel. Click the bell to be notified of new videos almost every week. And be sure to visit our website, mirrorvalley.com, for new episodes, the latest news, and behind-the-scenes information. That's mirrorvalley.com.
And now, the conclusion of tonight's story.
I let go of the tag, stood up, backing away from the cat. The phone number was mine. Surely it couldn't be. I took another look just to be certain. It was most definitely my phone number. Could it be just some strange coincidence? A mistake? A typo from someone with an almost identical number? My mind was racing with possibilities. The cat, having had its fill of watching my puzzled reaction, turned away from me and walked over to a spot next to the sofa where, for the first time, I noticed the food and water bowls set out on the floor. My heart skipped a beat. As the cat began lapping up water from its bowl, my gaze was drawn to the scratching post in the corner. There was even a cat toy lying on the coffee table. Looking around the room, I now noticed evidence of the cat's presence everywhere, as if this was clearly the creature's home. But I did not own a cat. Done drinking from its bowl, the cat sat on its back haunches and began cleaning itself. I was frozen where I stood, in shock, only one thought echoing over and over in my mind. What the hell was going on? Out of nowhere, the sound of footsteps behind me. I turned with a start.
Honey?
She stood in the bedroom doorway, watching me with concern.
Everything okay?
It's late. Come back to bed. Without a word, I reached out and turned off the light. Slowly, one foot in front of the other, I joined her at the bedroom door as she took my hand and led me to bed. We crawled into bed beside one another, and she leaned over to kiss my cheek.
Everything okay?
She asked as she snuggled in beside me. Sure, I managed. Fine. Good, she replied as she nuzzled into her pillow. night. I lay there, eyes wide open, staring into the darkness, the cat completely forgotten. I didn't have a girlfriend.
And so our time together comes to an end once more. Our paths will cross again soon. Until then, keep your eyes open, your mind sharp, and remember, what you see in the mirror is not always what it appears to be. Until next time, good night, friends.